And we are back. Mark Petroni with you on this edition of the show, on the Mark Petroni Show. And okay, so a lot of us have an opinion about the ArriveCan app. I happen to have one. I know that because I was down here in Florida. My brother came down to visit, and guess what? He had an older iPhone. Some reason had a problem either downloading the app or presenting it or whatever. Missed his flight on the way back home. Okay, so that's my close encounter with the ArriveCan app. I've never had it on my phone. I have no intention of ever having it on my phone. And now, of course, it's not even mandatory anymore. But it doesn't change the fact that millions of dollars were spent developing this app, $54 million. And guess what? Apparently, you can develop it for a tiny fraction of that. Andy Lee joining us from beautiful Calgary, Alberta, to talk about this story. And this is just another case of pandemic waste run amok. And I'm sure that there are worse cases than this, but still, $54 million is a sizable amount of money. And as you know, Andy, it was not necessary. They could have spent a tiny fraction of that in order to do basically the same thing. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of people question whether the ArriveCan app was necessary at all, right? It was supposed to be a pandemic measure to prevent transmission. Of course, we know that that didn't happen, right? So, yeah, the ArriveCan app was a huge issue for a lot of people. A lot of people fought back really hard against it. It started out as a couple of shady contracts given out. We weren't really given the names of the contractors. The Globe and Mail did disclose 5 names. And so I kind of zeroed in on one of those names, and that was GC Strategies, because they won huge contracts. And I was a little bit concerned about what I found because the company, doesn't have a storefront. Their business address led to a riverfront home in Ottawa. And, there was only a couple of employees. Their own website was glitchy when I tried to use it. And if you looked at their LinkedIn profile, they've got employees on there that are from a different GC strategies. There's a GC strategies in the United States, and they've actually got employees listed on their website from this other GC strategies. So I'm like, their LinkedIn looks like it's falsified. So the whole thing was crazy, right? And they won non-competitive contracts worth $14 million. So it was like, obviously these people are not developing ArriveCan in their basement. Obviously they're getting money to subcontract out, and that's fine, but it was all done very, very secretively.
Yeah,
And
was this a sole source kind of deal? Was
yeah, it
this
was.
like, yeah, okay, so let's look at your tweet here. One of the 5 contractors working on the ArriveCan app won a non-competitive contract. That's sole source. That's here you go. We like you. And I suppose they justified it on the pretext that, oh, well, we have to get this out. We don't have time to go through a competitive process. And you can't trust this government to do anything like that without favoring their friends. The company has 4 employees. They got $14 million worth of contracts here. I mean, and it has 4 employees, little history. Their own website, as you mentioned, does not work, and the business email or the business mailing address listed leads to a lakefront cottage. This is absolutely outrageous, but another example of how our government works. Talk a little bit about the shady nature of this company, Andy.
Yeah, well, like I said, I started to ask questions just because, I was like, how are they getting this sort of funds to develop this application? It's a lot of money for an application to start with, and this is only one of the contractors, right? So this is only 14 million out of the $54 million total. So, I was kind of like, obviously they're not doing the own development. Obviously they're subcontracting it out, and that was confirmed by the Globe and Mail that they are basically. So I mean, this is just handing people a bunch of money to go and subcontract out, and they subcontracted out to we don't even know how many companies, right? They won't list them. They won't tell us who all the subcontractors were. And like I said, their own LinkedIn is not correct. It's falsified. So I had huge issues with this group, and it was it's not. It's been around for a while, GC Strategies. I went back digging through corporate documents. Before they were GC Strategies, they were a small IT computing company called Corridal Systems. So that's something that hasn't come out yet in mainstream media. So they did used to run an IT company at some point called Corridal Systems, and then they amalgamated and became GC Strategies. But like I said, I couldn't really see any justification for this company winning this amount this sort of an award for basically what they were doing was subcontracting out, a app that had tremendous privacy concerns. And we did a show on this already about the privacy concerns. We went through their statements and talked about under what circumstances the government of Canada could harvest your information from the ArriveCan app and distribute it. And those were broad, right? And so that's going to be heard in front of a commission that's going on. But anyway, so yeah, just bizarre company, but a lot of fun. So Canadian companies, of course, were hurt by this, right? They felt really, shunned and left out. Why didn't they get this contract? So a couple of Canadian companies threw the gauntlet down and said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to redevelop the ArriveCan app. We're going to do it over a weekend, and we're going to show you that it wasn't worth $54 million. And so unfortunately, that my contact within the company, his name is Sheetal Jaitley. Unfortunately, he's tied up today with clients, but they run a company called Tribal Scale. And so Tribal Scale over Thanksgiving weekend, and happy Thanksgiving, by the way, everybody, actually went and redeveloped the ArriveCan app within 2 days.
Okay, what do we? I mean, this is a video here that we're playing. Obviously, for our radio listeners, they can't see it, but we're looking at a phone that somebody's logging in. And what is this that we're looking at? Is it like a 2 minute and 20 minute, 2 minute 20-second video?
Well, so they put it
no audio.
And so this is the application that they actually created. So they did this over a weekend, and they did it for free just to show the federal government up and to show how ridiculous and just out of control this contract was. This contract was given to multiple companies. A very small tech company within Canada recreated it over a weekend. That's pretty fantastic. And good for them for putting that challenge down and showing that this was totally unnecessary. I have a lot of respect for this company for going ahead and doing this. They did this on their long Thanksgiving holiday weekend, right? They did it for free just to prove that the way that this contract was distributed, through procurement was absurd.
Yeah, in fact, some of the other media have gotten taken this story on as well. Like the Toronto Sun, Jerry Agar over at the Toronto Sun wrote about it. But there hasn't been that much coverage. I mean, anything that embarrasses the government, I suppose, a good chunk of the legacy media is going to stay away from. But what is the upshot? I mean, has the conservative opposition under Pierre Poilievre gone after the government over this? I mean, have they taken the government to task over the fact that they spent so much of the people's money developing an app that could have been developed on a weekend for a tiny, minuscule fraction of the $54 million that it ended up costing?
Well, there are some hearings going on in the House of Commons about the ArriveCan app. We've heard, people from the industry and things like that, the tourism industry, who have testified in the House of Commons as to how much the ArriveCan app damaged cross-border travel and trade while it was in place. So, I'm thinking this is a little bit of a newer story, and we're still learning everything about it. And I don't know if we'll ever know everything about all the contracts that were given out. Apparently, those are, of course, they're secretive under procurement rules. So I don't know if we'll ever know everything about the subcontractors and who contributed to this application. But I do expect it to be coming up in the House of Commons and for it to be, a big issue. I think it's just another part of how we procured and gave out contracts during the pandemic. And maybe, we rushed and we didn't look too hard at where those contracts were actually going and, how that money was actually being used. So I think it's just, another case of huge pandemic waste, right? I mean, this company proved it. They went and made an application in a couple of days.
Yeah, and I think the reason they're getting away with it, or the reason they got away with it initially, is that people gave them the benefit of the doubt. They said, well, we're in a pandemic. We're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But obviously that was misplaced trust, though, wasn't it? I mean, we should never have trusted these people. And the only reason people allowed it to go through was because they thought it was a matter of safety and a matter of urgency. But it just goes to show you that, you give these guys an inch and they take a mile. and they will abuse the trust of the people whenever they're given it. And just another example. I mean, you've done tremendous work on this. I mean, have you ever crunched the numbers as to just how much money was wasted on all sorts of things that we didn't end up needing? The field hospitals is one of the things that comes to mind, which SNC-Lavalin, I believe, was given a sole source contract worth, I believe, 150 million off the top of my head. Nobody asked for those field hospitals. They were never required. But here was huge amounts of money that was given. SNC-Lavalin, which is obviously one of those pet companies that the Liberal government loves to throw money at. All you have to do is look at the the SNC-Lavalin scandal involving Jody Wilson-Raybould and all that led to her dismissal. But I mean, this it's just another example of government abusing the trust of the population, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, we can't trust these people at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if we're ever going to know the full tally of how much money was wasted. It's astronomical, I think, when you look at, yeah, contracts that were given away. I did look into ventilators a little bit. Sorry, I'm just looking for the company that it was given to. So yeah, so the feds paid $138,000 a piece for ventilators. That was a sole source contract that was given to one of Chrystia Freeland's constituents. And but what I found out is that the company, it actually, the backing of it was actually China. It was a Chinese company. It was a company called Yonghua. And we ended up, of course, never using these ventilators, right? They're sitting in a warehouse right now somewhere. We don't know what they're going to be used for, what we're going to do with them. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's just another, just irresponsible spending and irresponsible contracting being given out under the guise of emergency spending and things like that. And like I said, I don't think we're ever going to know, because a lot of these contracts are sealed. I have put out some access to information requests about this particular ventilator contract, because like I said, we were told that this was a Canadian company, but if you look and peel back the curtain, the financial backers, it's a Chinese company called Yonghua Capital, and it's in Shanghai. So it wasn't a Canadian company at all. And this isn't the first time that happened. So, what can I say, Mark? I mean, it looks like they're
they
trying
ashamed? I mean, has the government responded to this? Have they said, oh, wow, maybe we made a mistake, we'll revisit it? I mean, have they shown any sense of regret over the colossal waste of tax dollars on this, to your knowledge?
Well, I don't think that they are sorry, because like I said, I think they always wanted the ArriveCan app, and I think that they made that really clear. Marco Mendocino said that there's other applications, right? Even after the pandemic is done, if the pandemic is ever going to be done, and I doubt it's ever going to be done. Marco Mendocino said specifically that there were other applications that they were interested in using the ArriveCan app for. And that's when I began to get really, really suspicious of it, and looked into the privacy statements and things like that to see when they could use your data and pull your data. And like I said, we've gone through this before. The circumstances under which the government of Canada is allowed to harvest your data from the ArriveCan app are very, very lenient and very, very broad. It's basically whenever they say that they need it, they can use it. So, and people don't want that. Right. I mean, there's all kinds of problems. Not everybody has cell phones. Exactly. We had people who were ordered into quarantine when they, were not supposed to be ordered into quarantine. That's pretty serious when you have a government application ordering you into a federal quarantine without any cause. And that happened to Mercedes Stevenson, right? So it happened to a reporter. I personally, when I used the ArriveCan app, I was coming in from Mexico. My documents wouldn't upload to it. They wouldn't save. So that was a huge issue for me at the border. I had to get taken aside, put into a room. I had to be questioned. I had to, reproduce all of my documents, all of my vaccine records for them to be let loose. I had to do a mandatory test. And I was ordered into quarantine because my documents.
Yeah, and you're fully vaxxed. I mean, you're double vaxxed, right?
Yeah, I'm double vaxxed, right? So
I got to ask you, with the minute we've got, you're aware that, of course, the government is going to be subject to this scrutiny during this inquiry over the convoy, the declaration of the Emergencies Act You yourself had your accounts frozen. I mean, do you have any thoughts about this thing? You were not called as a witness. Did you want to testify at this thing?
I definitely did want to testify just because I was there from, from the early days when, we were still out west and the convoy was gathering. So I think that I had some valuable insights as to, what the goals were of the convoy at that time. And I could testify that it's not, it wasn't a whole bunch of dark money. It wasn't this well orchestrated plot to overthrow the government. None of that actually went on. It was very, very chaotic in the early days. I said that I would get involved and help promote it and try to help grow it and to try to protect the convoy as best as I could from, any false reporting or any slanders that were going on. And I think that I did that job as best as I could. I did as much as I could for them to try to make sure that all the reporting that was done was fair and truthful. And I was successful in debunking some of the stories that were put out. So I wish that they had called me, but I wasn't expecting them to call on me. It looks like mostly they've called on politicians, police, Ottawa citizen residents, a couple of the organizers, and then, a lot of politicians. So, I was hoping that they would call on some more lay people like myself, to
Obviously,
give
they were much more interested in calling on bureaucrats. Most of the people who are testifying are just government people. Andy,
yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the show. I got to go, but really appreciate it as always.
Well, it's good to see you. Yeah, and happy Thanksgiving down in sunny Florida. And
Yeah, they don't
yeah,
have Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is in November down here.
you've got a little bit
But
of a while to
hey, I'm
go,
still Canadian, and I
but you
intend
still
to
need me.
continue celebrating Canadian holidays just like Thanksgiving in October. All
So
right,
yeah, I'm hoping we can get Sheetal Jaitley from Tribal Scale
yeah.
once his
Let's get
schedule.
him on. That would be a
Put him
fantastic
on,
gift.
and he can tell us exactly how his team recreated this app, and I'd like him
Sure.
to get a cost analysis as to if they were going to market this app, how much they think that they would sell it for, and would it be worth $54 million?
Yeah, I wouldn't even be worth probably $54,000.
Yep. So
Thank
yeah,
you
so
so.
let's try to touch base with them later on and get
Let's
them on
do
the
that.
show. Look
Thank
at
you,
this.
Andy. Bye. Appreciate
Okay,
it.
take care.
Let's take a break. Back with more on Newstalk Saga 960 and the Mark Petronis Show after this.